The Harry Styles stuff that you did is some of the most impressive things I've ever listened to, musically related.
Thank you.
When you first get tracks like that in, can you walk me through like your thought process?
Then I sit down and think these songs are crazy. Yeah.
So a couple weeks ago, I had the pleasure of interviewing Mike Miller at Sweetwater in Studio B. I was there for his Atmos Masterclass, which was absolutely mind-blowing. Mike has mixed Harry Styles and Macklemore and Lil Nas X and Tyler, the Creator, and just an epic list of incredible albums from incredible artists. And so we spent about 30 minutes digging in to like his mindset behind this stuff, talking about industry stuff, talking about Atmos stuff. And I'm really pumped to share that interview with you guys. Very much a podcast style interview, so I hope you enjoy this. As always, there are links down below for every piece of gear that I use. And if you use any of those links to purchase anything you ever need, anytime you need to buy gear, it really helps support this channel. Those links go to Sweetwater, and Sweetwater is sponsoring this video. So thank you, Sweetwater, for sponsoring this video. Let's go have a chat with the man himself, Mike Miller. You ready?
Let's do it.
So I'm here with Mike Miller. We just finished day one of your Atmos Masters mixing class, and it was absolutely incredible. I feel like you broke my brain today. And cut many weeks or maybe months off of my experimentation time trying to settle into this new Atmos situation that we're in. So if you could tell everybody a little bit about like how you got into this and how you were early to the game and like what all went into like getting to the forefront of this whole situation.
Sure. Well, first, thanks.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Basically, as a mixer, we are constantly just looking for differentiators and how to get to the next level. And throughout the process of trying to figure that out, mixing stereo, a friend of mine was really nudging me to start doing Atmos. And then once I heard about Apple, I was like, okay, this actually makes sense. They're like, you know, the biggest trendsetters probably like in the world. Mm-hmm. And we all know that the future is immersive. So
with like VR and augmented reality.
Yeah. We're all like in the metaverse or whatever. Like we know that like we're going to be immersive, everything. Yes. So I basically saw that as a differentiator of like what I could do to really get to the next level because it's different. And at that time, really early on, there were really no music mixers doing it.
Yeah.
And the stuff that was out, people were not happy with how it sounded. And so I thought to myself, if I could really figure this out and make it sound good and then also create a service for the labels to make it easy for them, then this could be like a game changer for me in my career.
And you talked a little bit in the class today about how, you know, you look at the great mixers, Spike and Serban and CLA and fill in the blank with so many of them and how it would be really difficult or maybe impossible for one of us in our generation to reach that level or that status.
Yeah.
And this was maybe a way for you to carve your own path.
Exactly.
To maybe be able to reach that status without necessarily competing with those guys. Is that accurate?
100%. That's exactly. That's totally it.
That's awesome. Walk me through a little bit of the struggles in the very beginning. In layman's terms, however you can simplify it, of like the difficulties of the gear, of not having reference mixes, of all of that kind of stuff.
There is a lot of those issues and road bumps. There were lots of nuances within like what the computer rig needed to be. There needed to be like two computers and like a thing to link, multiple things to link them, and it was just like super convoluted. Basically, my goal was to figure out what the room needed to sound like and also how can we optimize for spatial audio. Because to me, like from the beginning, I'm saying like, obviously I'm mixing Atmos, but I'm mixing for spatial audio.
Yeah.
So it's like I was set out to figure that out. Like, what is spatial audio? What is the algorithm? How is what I'm doing in this room translating? What are they doing to the mix? And that was extremely difficult to figure out, but I was lucky enough to be able to figure it out.
Yeah, you were talking about like different tests that you guys did with like bleeps or click tracks basically and placing those everywhere around the room and then more or less bouncing those down and then analyzing that in spatial so that way you could learn what spatial was doing, which is like mind bending how much of work and time that must have taken.
It was a lot, but the thing is like I had invested all this money into this like whole room, and like when I did a mix and then listened to it in spatial audio, it did not translate. So I was like, I have to figure this out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I don't have a choice.
100%.
And also this is what I set out to do.
Yes.
Like
you knew that going into it.
I knew it was not gonna be easy.
Yeah.
And I was hoping that I'd be able to figure it out and make it work. Yeah.
100%. So fast forward to today, your spatial mixes are hands down my favorite.
Thank you.
Like by a pretty significant percentage. And we spent some time today talking and listening to the differences between the stereo masters and his spatial mixes. And it kind of broke my brain a little bit, like honestly. Yeah. And what also broke my brain was how little you were actually doing. It's not like there was a billion plugins and a billion things. You were just making the perfect choices.
Oh, thank you.
And you talked about, which is something that I've been preaching on this channel since the beginning, is how do I get to the finish line in the fewest moves possible?
That's it. That's literally it.
And I've always took that approach on everything, tracking, producing, mixing, all of it. How few of EQ moves can I get to the finish line with?
Exactly.
And I feel like you have kind of taken that to a whole new level, I think.
Thank you.
How, could you expand on a little bit of your thought process behind like placement in spatial and how you get around needing EQ and needing that kind of stuff?
Right. Yeah, totally. Well, there's a few things. One is the room and moving stuff around the room, and I'll explain that. And the other thing is harmonics. And I mean, that's really what it is. And it just like levels in general. So when moving stuff throughout the room, you can actually change like the frequency responses or what you're perceiving the frequency response to be.
Just by placing it in a different location.
Exactly, yes.
It's amazing. And you were given some examples of that, like you were working on, was it some claps or something where all you did was raise it from the side up a little bit?
Just a little bit, and it created like a totally different feeling. Like it gets rid of like boxiness and like boominess, and also can create like feeling less claustrophobic too when stuff is on the side and you want it there, but you want it to be like a little bit less apparent, which is another way of doing like not having to move the fader or move clip gain or anything. Like you have so much control over all the different things and dynamics through moving stuff throughout the room.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. So the Harry Styles stuff that you did is some of the most impressive things I've ever listened to, musically related.
Thank you.
When you first get tracks like that in, can you walk me through like your thought process? Like, are you focusing on the emotional side? Are you focusing on like, is it just instantly faders at zero? Where am I gonna put stuff? Like, give me like a rough step-by-step of you get the stems, what are you thinking?
Well, when I get the stems, I have my assistants prep and they put certain things in these specific locations that I have that we were
panning wise.
Yeah. And then I sit down and think, these songs are crazy. Yeah. And that was my first thought.
Yeah.
And Candace has a video of me like pressing play for the first time. And we were just like, oh my God, music for a sushi restaurant. It was like unbelievable, crazy. So then my first intuition is like, what's the low end doing? Because that's like what I love. I love the low end. I love like detailed, like kick, bass, like and the vocal. So when my assistants get the stems, like I said, there's specific locations for where I put the vocal and the main instrument and like the kick and bass and stuff. And so that'll be there. And then they'll spread some stuff around the room to like give me a room feel so that I can start like on those type of things.
Not starting from actual zero.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'll never start mixing a session with all the stems in the front.
Got it.
Yeah.
So for those watching who don't have assistants, what would be your move if you didn't have an assistant that could do that?
I would say try not to get into the mixing brain.
Okay.
And try like for the people here that heard like the specific coordinates, start doing that. We're going to do that tomorrow.
Yeah.
We're opening up some sessions and incorporating these tricks, I don't know, philosophies.
Yeah.
We're coining it the Mike Miller method. Like I said,
which so far has been mind-blowing.
Thanks.
How like simplistic but yet perfectly effective it is, honestly.
Thank you. So what I would say is do those things and then start moving things around, just like so that it starts feeling like you're in a room or like you're inside the song. and then put your mixing cap on.
Got it.
And get like
More
emotionally
technical
connected
with
to it.
more, yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Is there any general philosophies that you have, which we touched on today, but is there any general philosophies you have on things that you like to put in certain places, like any common threads across a lot of stuff that you do?
There is. So basically, the method that I was telling you about is there's like a specific place that I always put the vocals, and there's a specific place I always put the main instrument. Not always, but most of the time.
Most of the time, yeah.
And then we start from there. And then I basically, one of the things that we talked about is that I view the landscape of the mix different than like how I think probably most people do and how stereo is. Like in stereo, we have the left and right. And then for me...
And the spectrum between.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then for me, the left and right becomes the surrounds that are next to you.
Yeah.
And what that does is then it creates this picture.
That mindset shift seems really important.
It's super, super important. And it's really what really took my mixes to a whole other level.
Yeah.
And it makes you feel so immersed in the song, but also translates spatial audio better. It sounds crazier in spatial audio. It sounds wider. And it's like, it actually makes sense of the 3D format. Because if you're still looking at it like this and then just placing a couple things here and there, it doesn't really do the thing.
Yeah.
You don't get
100%.
that like connection, that like emotional impact that you can when you actually feel like you're inside the song.
And that emotional impact is something, I even asked you a question in the class about that. Like the emotional impact of those songs and of your mixes is one of the most intense, obviously, of course, in this room. Like there's a lot of factors going on there, but it's one of the most intense emotional reactions I've had to music, like period, like full stop. And you said that basically you're just working on making it sound good, and the emotion, because we're in spatial, because we're in Atmos, the emotion is just automatically so much more intense.
Yeah, if you do it right.
Sure.
Yeah, like like you said, like my goal is to make it sound better, bigger, and more real. You know what I mean? Like I want it to feel like where I place the vocal it makes you feel like the person is in the room with you.
It
you know
absolutely
what I mean?
does.
But it doesn't feel disconnected.
Right.
And that's a huge part of like connecting emotionally. It's like you feel like everything makes sense and is in its place, but you feel like you're inside of the music.
100%. So that leads me to the next thing, which we discussed quite a bit amongst ourselves and with you, is you don't seem very afraid to enhance the stereo mix, to try to beat the stereo mix. What limited experience I have in Atmos is it's just how do we replicate what was already there spatially. And your approach seems very much like, how can I just make this sound as good as I can?
Make the best mix.
Yeah, and then you kind of don't seem to worry about anyone getting pushback, giving pushback, because it's just better. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Well, you have so much more room, and like we just said, like you have so much more like capability to connect emotionally, and that's the point of music anyways. So I try not to like mess too much with like the level dynamic that the mix has, because they put the leveling for a reason. And it also creates like the glue that the people are looking for and what they're used to. So my also another thing that I do is like I feel like the more immersive and the better I can and bigger I can make it sound in the room, the better it sounds on spatial anyways. And
when you say better it sounds on spatial, you're talking about the fold down 2 headphones basically, right?
Well, what Apple Music's doing in the headphones. So like when you're sorry, I should explain.
No, that's okay.
So when I say spatial, I mean the like Apple Music when you're listening on your AirPod Pros or Maxes,
the
or
consumer side.
Yeah, or the new bass models have it too now, and the Beats.
So, and all the automobiles.
Yes, exactly. All the cars and everything they're going to be Atmos. So you have an Atmos TV.
I have which I'll talk about in other videos. I have an Atmos TV. The sound bars, half the stuff on Netflix.
I mean, even if you're listening on your iPhone speakers, it's like mind blowing how much better it is because you have all the headroom. Right. So it's like everything sounds more clear just coming out of your iPhone speakers.
Yes. Everything sounds better and more clear if the Atmos mixes are on point.
Yeah.
Which you certainly were. We spent a lot of time being like the stereo masters versus your Atmos mixes, and it was just shocking how much bigger and clear and open and headroom and punchier, and
Yeah.
Every word you could throw at it.
And these are great stereo mixes too that we're talking about. They're like done by the best of the best.
Top shelf, yeah.
But there's just so many limitations to stereo because of loudness.
Yes.
And because of the space.
And because we're carving every instrument up to fit in.
Yes.
CLA used to talk about the parking spots.
Exactly.
Where like you have to get every single element to fit in this parking spot.
This is the opposite.
It's literally the opposite.
It's the opposite. And that's what I spend a lot of time doing is bringing everything back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Bringing all the stuff back. And that's like, I use this, I don't know if you can see the gear.
Well, I'll throw some B-roll over
Okay, yeah. But I use this gear to bring the life back into the music. And that's, you know, what we have always tried to do, like what I've tried to do in stereo mixing too, is just like bring life back, you know? And what you can do in Atmos, in spatial audio, to bring life back is it's mind-blowing.
It is mind-blowing.
Yeah, and it's like we're not up against the brick limiter and having to like send someone a -7 mix, you know what I mean? So we can have so much more low end, we can have like beautiful top end, we can have dynamics, we can have transients. And even when it folds down to stereo from that, it's like...
Still incredible.
It's unbelievable.
So talk a little bit about the hardware that you use, and I'll throw B-roll up. Like, tell me a little bit about your favorite pieces and that you use on everything.
Okay, so it's pretty much all Hazelrig Industries and DW Fern.
Yeah.
I have a VT5, VT7, I have VLCs, and I have V&Es. And basically, they're set up as hardware inserts, so I can put them on any track, and then I'll commit it and then put them on the next one.
So you're printing everything and then moving on the hardware inserts to the next thing.
Yes, yeah. And then I also have an Unfair Child.
Okay.
And I have a pair of Siemens vintage EQs.
Okay.
And I have... That's like the main hardware.
That's the bread and butter.
But then also an important part is the Lavry Savitra. That's like a big kind of like saucy thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have that set up to go from AD after the VT5.
Okay.
So there's like a lot of stuff that you can do like harmonics wise. Well, it's also my mix bus for stereo.
Got it.
But also as the hardware insert, what I'll do sometimes, like if there's a song that like has like a lot of like clipping or like it needs that juice, I will like Pro Q 10 dB up into the VT5 and clip the Lavry coming back in.
Coming back in.
Yes.
Got it.
And then clip it back down afterwards, but you still get the juice from it.
Yeah. Very cool.
So
that's how you're
part.
bringing a lot of energy, because we talked a lot about that too. So much of what we do in stereo is about creating energy and glue, but this is totally different, and you're kind of using that clipping technique on the converters to get some of that energy back.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And recently we've been using the Hornet Samp plugin that has a clipper on it, and basically what it does is every instance of the plugin gets fed to each other. So it's basically like a fake mix bus that you can use in Atmos.
Yeah.
And it has a clipper on it as well, and a limiter, compressor.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about like your speaker setup and your room setup.
Okay. So I have 2 rooms. They're both 914. They're mirrored rooms. They're the same. I have MB3 XBDs, PMCs.
PMC, yeah.
Yeah, PMC, MB. They're all PMC. All the speakers are PMC. They're MB3 XBDs for the left and right, and then an MB3 center channel without the XBD. And then, like in this room, there's 4 2.2 subs, and then the same CIs that are going around here around and on the ceiling.
Nice. And I have a whole video going over this exact room. I'll link it down below, so be sure to go check that out. So when you're using these pieces of hardware, you're using them to just, I mean, you showed us some examples of before and after of these pieces, and it was pretty mind-blowing, the difference.
Yes.
So you're just using them to make everything bigger, more impressive.
Yeah.
Like, talk a little bit about that if you could.
I mean, these guys are just geniuses.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really know what they do. You know what I mean?
There's not even like frequency selections. There's just switches,
it's low,
right?
Yeah, it's just low cut, low boost, high cut.
And you don't even know what frequency.
I don't think they know what the frequency is. They're just like, this sounds good. This is musical. You know what I mean? I shouldn't speak for them, but I kind of remember them saying something like that.
Yeah.
It's just like they just use their ears. They're brilliant, like musicians and minds. But basically, the point of me having this gear is that, you know, obviously I feel lucky to be able to have it, but it's the type of gear. It's something that will always make something a lot better.
Yeah.
Like I'll never have to like wonder, if I put it on, is it better or is it not?
Like we think about a lot of stuff, like, 1176 is very versatile, but it doesn't work on absolutely everything.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So this is the opposite of that.
That's the opposite. It's like, oh, this is better at all times.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And you're using it's EQ, and they're basically preamps as well.
They're preamps, yeah, but so they have tubes. So basically, when you run it through them, they're just giving them juice, giving them life, making them come out of the speakers.
Amazing. Where do you see the future of Atmos going? Like, what is on the horizon for this whole thing?
Well, like I said in the beginning, to me, and I feel like pretty much everyone, the future is immersive.
Yes.
All the cars are becoming immersive.
Yep. The homepage on Apple Music, all the playlists, they're all...
Yeah. I mean, everywhere that we ingest music is going to be immersive. I mean, the cars is like kind of the biggest thing because everyone listens to music in the cars. Everyone's got AirPods.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's defaulted. It's going to be defaulted in the cars.
Yep.
You have a TV that has Atmos, all the home pods, home systems. Like, there's, like, once you, like, experience what a really good stereo fold-down sounds like, that's the worst case scenario.
Right.
You know what I mean? Which is crazy to say because it sounds amazing.
Absolutely.
So
the future is just really everyone is going to be consuming this. It's going to be the standard.
Yes. And like all the goggles, they're already like immersive. Like we have a set of VR goggles, like, they're not very new. Like, or they are new. They're not very old.
Yeah.
But they're like not new technology that's coming out. Like we went to CES and there's like crazy stuff happening. But like even that, like when we play like VR mini golf, like it feels like immersive and you move your head around and you're in space.
There.
Yeah.
That's absolutely
and
amazing.
It's just like I say this to everybody. This is just the beginning. Yeah. The very, very beginning.
It feels to me like this is what it must have felt like when stereo first became a thing.
Totally. Like
or
going from mono.
Or when Pro Tools first became a thing. Or like any of these enormous leaps in the ability to create music. That's what this feels like.
Yeah, totally. It totally feels like that. Like this is a total shift in our world for music, but also like for everybody.
Yeah. Is there anything that you can say to up and coming engineers and mixers who would see the getting into Atmos as a big hurdle to jump?
That's a good question.
What could you say to them to encourage them that this is the future and that it's worth making the sacrifice for?
That's a really, really good question. What we're trying to do at the Atmosphere is bring up engineers that would not have the chance to get the cuts that we can give them. There's a lot of differentiation between rates. There's lots of things that need to get mixed in Atmos that can't afford me as a mixer. So to me, being able to train engineers and give them opportunity to get major label credits is like unbelievable. Like it's so crazy to me because I wish I had someone like that.
Yes.
And like until now, that didn't exist.
Yep.
It doesn't exist. Everyone's fighting for the same mix.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And now we have the ability because of this new technology for up and coming mixers to actually like break through the barrier.
Yeah.
So what I would say is like, do what you can. I mean, for me, like I'm not very risk adverse. Like I've taken out, like I said, when I wanted to get the big PMCs to like take my mixing to the next level, I took out a loan. And for this, I took out another loan because I believed, and I really believed that this was the future and was going to catapult my career. I was hoping.
Yeah, and it did, right?
Yeah.
I mean, clearly,
yeah.
Like you've worked on some of the biggest records that have come out in the past couple years.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely amazing. What's your philosophy on like the minimum investment? We talked a little bit about this because obviously you guys know now that I'm putting an Atmos rig in my room.
And now I know.
And I originally was planning on doing 714, and some of the techniques that you were showing and some of the ways we listened to stuff that you were showing in these classes made it brutally obvious to me that I have to go 914.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you for helping my bank account go empty quicker.
I've been known to be a very bad influence.
I love spending other people's money too. But it's a big sacrifice. Is there like a minimum level of investment? Like as of right now, doing it solely on headphones is not a thing. It's not really possible.
People are doing it, but it's not good. It will not translate, and the mixes will have to be redone.
Yeah.
If you're mixing in headphones, the mix will have to be redone.
Yeah. So someone who's literally a bedroom producer, but working on 50 songs a year, is there like a minimum thing, speakers or systems or anything that you can suggest on how to get into it at the very base level?
That's a really tough question because there's...
And be totally honest.
Yeah. To me, it's tough because I feel like, number one, you need 914 because the wides, like I was explaining,
I totally agree,
is like kind of the most important part, maybe.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to like choose, but it's like super important.
It's super important. Yeah.
But also, and I think if you're starting out and you want to like dive into it, it's cool to get like, you know, a cheap like speaker rig that you can do that with.
And at least get your feet wet, get off
your
the
feet
ground.
wet, yeah. But if you're trying to like get to the level where you're competing at a high level, then you don't want to limit yourself with what you're using.
You have to invest in your room and in your speakers.
Yeah, and I have this conversation with a lot of people too, where they're like, "Man, if I had the work coming in, I'd do it." I'm like, "But you have to do it like that's how you get the work."
I have talked about that a bunch of times. Like whatever even if you have to hire a band for the very beginning engineers, hire a band yourself.
Yeah.
And record the band yourself. And maybe it's not getting released anywhere, but at least you have something to show for yourself. You have to invest.
Right.
You have to build the thing before.
Totally. It's like, why would they give you the mix?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So it's like, it's risky.
Yes.
But you also have to believe in yourself, and you have to, you know, you gotta believe in you have to, and like, there's no successful people that didn't risk.
100%.
That just came to.
100%. I'm currently in my 4th room studio that I've had in my career, and every one of them was a big jump and a risk.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah.
So it just comes with it. It's a hard like chicken or the egg thing because you can't really get the upper level work until you've done great work.
Everyone wants like a safe investment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everyone wants like oh, this makes sense because I'm already like, this is not a risk.
Right.
This is not scary to me.
Yep.
And unfortunately, it doesn't work like that.
As far as timeline goes, we're still kind of in the early stages of this whole thing in terms of the quantity of people that are adopting it.
Yeah.
Which is something that I have felt the pressure pretty significantly on of like getting in before it's too late, so to speak. Yeah. And now we're kind of already there. So
I don't know if we're there yet, but definitely there's a lot of adapters now.
Well, it kind of, in Nashville anyway, it came out like February 1st, the whole playlisting stuff. And now like in like 10 days span, all of my clients are like, hey, I need that stuff we're working on in Atmos.
Yeah.
And I'm like, great, because I wasn't ready.
Yeah, exactly.
So my encouragement, I guess, to you guys would be that if you're working at a professional level, if you're working with paying clients, I personally think, do everything you can to get into this at whatever level you can get into it. I mean, it kind of made your career.
Totally. It absolutely did.
Yeah.
And it's also like way more fun.
Yes. Yeah, it is unbelievably fun.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk a whole bunch more about that because the creative side of it, the emotional side of it, it's like hearing music for the first time. And I don't think that's an overstatement.
Totally. I've had so many like producers and artists come in and they're like, how am I supposed to go back to my room right now? And like, also I've like had artists come in and listen to their songs and like cry and be like, first of all, I didn't know that anything could sound like this.
100%.
And also I feel like reinvigorated to make music, period. Like I felt like everything was stale. I was just going through the motions, and now it's like this actually like reignited the flame in me.
100%. And I kind of feel the same way.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I really do. So this has been a master class with Mike Miller at Sweetwater, and you're going to do more of these, I assume?
Yeah, we'll do more.
If you have the opportunity to come to one of these classes, we're only through the end of day 1, and we have a whole nother day. And I can't think of another way that I could have spent my time that would have been any better. So
glad.
Thank you very much for being on the channel, and thanks for
having me.
Yeah, and thank you for doing this class for us.
Of course.
Very much appreciated.
Very excited about it.
If you guys have questions about any of the things we talked about in that interview, drop them as comments down below, and I'll do my best to answer all of your questions. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget links down below for everything. And go follow Mike. I'll put Mike's Instagram and stuff down below in the description. So go follow him, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.